This year has taken a toll out of all of us, but no one has suffered more than my gut. I've tried 3 different probiotics, several different vitamins, and it was getting expensive and exhausting. But I think I found my new holy grail for better gut health.
You are not the only one. I think I can safely speak for Josh when I say our household could also benefit from improved gut health and overall nutrition. And that's why we are so excited to share Athletic Greens with our listeners.
We really are. Athletic Greens has changed the game for my daily vitamin routine. With 1 delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, I'm absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help me start my day right.
In the few weeks since I've started using Athletic Greens, I don't have the tummy issues I was constantly experiencing. I feel an improvement in my metabolism, and I haven't been craving junk food as much. The ability to add it to a smoothie, take it with almond milk, water, or juice makes it easier for all of us to enjoy it however we'd like.
That's so true. And I've actually replaced my morning caffeine with Athletic Greens. And no lies, I feel more energized than ever. And at less than $3 a day, that was less than I was already spending on coffee.
What I really appreciate about Athletic Greens is that they are giving back to the community. For every purchase, they make a donation to an organization helping to get nutritious foods to children in need, including No Kid Hungry. They donated 1.2 million meals to children in need in 2020.
It's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially as we're heading into flu and cold season. It's just 1 scoop every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health.
To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/rain.
Again, that's athleticgreens.com/rain to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
Hi, it's me, Alicia Holland, and I'm the host of the new podcast, Always Be My Sisters. Always Be My Sisters is the Golden Girls podcast. As I take you through each episode's synopsis, I'll also touch on the pop culture references, the oh boys of jokes that didn't age well, and the plot whoopsies. I'll even have special guests stop by to share their thoughts about the topics being discussed. So join me and my Coco as we celebrate the Golden Girls and why they are still so loved all these years later. Always Be My Sisters, streaming wherever you get your podcasts. Murder in the Rain would like to give a big shout out to our personal Valentines, our newest Patreon members, Mariah S. from Irving, Texas, Kimber T. from Bay Point, California, Maureen S. from Hillsboro, hey neighbor, and Sandra B. from Portland. Thanks so much, you guys, and we hope you enjoy your extra content. And if you want to hear your name being given a shout out on the show, all you have to do is find us at patreon.com/murderintherain. Content warning. This episode contains talks of suicide and graphic violence against women and children. Listener discretion advised.
I'm Emily Rowney.
And I'm Alicia Holland.
This is Bill Camp, the voice of Forensic Files 2 on HLN, and you're listening to Murder in the Rain.
As you know, we record a few weeks in advance, but to those who are listening on release day, this past Sunday marked a very special day, Valentine's Day, or for those in my life, Emily's birthday. The history of Valentine's Day goes a little something like this. It's a Christian feast day celebrating a martyr named Saint Valentine. Saint Valentine was sent to jail and persecuted for being a minister to Christians. While there, the lore claims that he cured his jailer's daughter's blindness and wrote her a letter which was signed, Your Valentine, thus spawning a long-held tradition of writing love letters called Valentines.
Didn't he also do illegal marriages? Isn't that where, like, the romantic aspect comes in?
Possibly. I didn't dig that deep.
Oh, well, then I'll let you know. So they had said they didn't want the young men being married because they'd be distracted at war. Mm-hmm. And so they had put a kibosh on marriages, and St. Valentine was secretly marrying people.
Well, that's an interesting little tidbit. I like that. Now, if you ask my grandfather, he would say, meh, it's a Hallmark holiday, a day for lovers to celebrate each other, but more so to spend loads of money on chocolates and jewelry, fueling consumerism. But regular folks just see it as a day to make that special someone in your life feel loved and appreciated. Now, those of you out there who, like me, may be currently single, don't fret. My favorite Valentine's Days of years past were made special thanks to my friends, not some dude who spent money on me. I mean, I'm not going to turn that down, though. I know there are those out there that get sad around this time of year because they feel lonely without a partner, or maybe they recently lost their partner. But today, I might just give you a reason to feel a little bit better about that and maybe skip next Valentine's Day altogether. Today's episode has 2 cases, both of which happened on Valentine's Day. I think the morals you might learn from today is that it's perfectly fine to be single, and sometimes you don't even know the person you love. And while we can't always trust strangers and the people behind an avatar online, sometimes someone you don't even know might just save the day. Now, we all love the internet. In fact, I imagine most of us can't fathom living without it. I can still remember the day I got to play on the internet for the first time. I was in 7th grade, and my friend Heidi and I got on AOL Instant Messenger to chat with boys. From that moment on, any chance I got, I would be online in chat rooms making friends and wondering if they looked at all how they described themselves. But kids, the rumors are true. There are bad people hiding on the internet. Old men hiding as young boys and girls, girlfriends catfishing their boyfriends, predators looking for their next victims. And worst of all, for every skeevy pervert on the internet, there are dozens more who share the same desires. In the first of my 2 Valentine's Day cases, I'd like to share the story of a man who was seeking a specific kind of arrangement on the internet. He wanted his Valentine's Day to be one that no one forgot, and to do so, he didn't need just one Valentine, he needed dozens. This is the case of Gerald Dean Krein Jr. and how he used the internet to plot a Valentine's Day nightmare. In the early 2000s, Gerald Dean Krein Jr., a mid-20s man described as burly and having a proclivity for tie-dye t-shirts, moved from his home in Citrus Heights, California, to Klamath Falls, Oregon, to be with his parents. His father was sick and his mother needed help caring for him. But when Krein wasn't playing the perfect son to his parents, he was up to much more nefarious acts online. The internet was a special place for him, one where he could find people who were hurting inside just as much as he was. He could find people to talk to about his dark thoughts, people who could empathize with wanting to end their lives and leave the pain they lived with every day. Krein was preparing for a very special event in February of 2005. He was planning a party and had spent years cultivating his guest list. In a chat called Suicide Ideology, Krein had brought together over 30 women who shared his feelings that life was not worth living. He wanted to help them with their journeys by inviting them to his home in Klamath Falls, where they could enjoy one last hurrah with an orgy and then hang themselves as a group and die together. One of the women that Krein was chatting with regularly had been considering suicide for a very long time. When he approached her to invite her to his Valentine's Day suicide party, she was intrigued and even considering it. That party was planned for February 14th, 2005. All 30 women had their invites, but it wasn't clear if anyone was really planning to attend. A week before the scheduled party, police received a call from a woman in Canada regarding a concerning chat she had with someone online. She explained that she was part of a group discussing a suicide party. The plan was to travel to this man's home in Oregon, have a sex party, and then everyone who attended would kill themselves. While this woman was seriously considering attending the party, she grew concerned over her most recent correspondence with the man planning the party because he mentioned children. Police took these claims very seriously, so on February 7th, they brought Krein in for an interview to discuss the recent conversation about the party. During the interview, Krein flew off the hinges and started screaming at the police. He was cursing and throwing and kicking objects around the office. The woman had given police a 10-page printout of the chat she had with Krein to illustrate why she was so concerned. So I'll go ahead and read a part of that was published in the Albany Democrat-Herald. Krein went by the name Suicide Party 2005, and the Canadian women went by Happy Love. I'll read this to you in correct English, but I'll tell you now that Krein had some very interesting spelling choices. No judgment. Alicia can attest to the creativity to my own text spelling. Suicide Party 2005. The woman who is bringing her kids wants you to help kill them. Happy Love. Okay, why? Suicide Party 2005. She just does. Do you want to help kill them? Happy Love. No, they're kids. Suicide Party 2005. They're 16 to 22. Happy Love. No, I don't want to help with that. I don't want to hurt anyone. Just take care of myself. Suicide Party 2005. Do you want to hold hands as we hang? Happy Love. Yes. Suicide Party 2005 then goes on to ask Happy Love if she wants to, quote, choke hang or break neck hang. He told her that he had planned to attach ropes to hooks on a reinforced beam in his computer room of his house. There was a little bit more interaction. Suicide Party 2005 wanted details on how Happy Love looked, if she watched porn, if she wanted to be nude when she died. They even went on webcam for a little bit where Happy Love tells him that he was attractive but needed to smile. Toward the end of the conversation, Suicide Party 2005 asked her if she was going to call the cops, to which she replied that she wouldn't, but thankfully she did. 2 days after the interview with police, Krein was arrested in his mom's mobile home in Klamath Falls on Wednesday, February 9th, 2005. The media helped police all over the United States spread the word that they were looking for anyone who had spoken to Krein about his party. It was one of those rare times when police was thankful for the media's assistance because there were so many women to locate because they wanted to make sure they were safe and their children were safe. On the day of the party, Monday, February 14th, police sat outside Krein's mobile home prepared to meet any woman who arrived for the planned party. Luckily, no one showed up and the police didn't have to intervene. There was still a worry that people all over the world could still have planned to complete suicide that day. It was clear that not every person Krein engaged with was planning to travel thousands of miles to go to this party, but they were all well-versed in the internet and talked about doing it via webcam. A second phone call ended up coming in from a woman named Jamie who lived in Portland, Oregon. Her screen name was Kill Tori Spelling, and there was some speculation that she got the attention of Krein because of her screen name having the word kill in it.
Maybe he was just a big 90210 fan.
Well, weren't we all? Jamie contacted police to let them know that she had concerns about a suicide party that was being discussed online. In fact, there were women planning to go who mentioned they were bringing their children. Investigators seized items from the house Krein shared with his parents, including a webcam, 3 computers, and thousands of DVD pornography, spanning with titles like Barely Legal Females to Brother and Sister Incest. They also subpoenaed Krein's chat room records, which would have multiple people dissecting them, including the FBI, who the police asked for help reviewing. It was easy to confirm that he had, in fact, been planning a suicide party. The chat room he created on Yahoo Chat was titled Suicide Party 2005. Krein's description of the party was a sex fest that would ultimately end with everyone hanging themselves from a beam he was planning to build that would be able to hold up to 50 people. The real work began as investigators tried to find out who each of these women really were. There is a lot of privacy when it comes to online chat rooms, including the fact that we can all use anonymous names. They had 31 women they were looking to identify, and in the early stages of the investigation, they could only identify 3 of them. I think that's why they ended up turning to the FBI. What they ended up finding was thousands of conversations dating all the way back to the year 2000. He had been part of a suicide news group back in 2003. It was clear from his chat records that he had been seeking out women who appeared vulnerable or depressed. His intent was to convince them to do sexual acts with him before killing themselves. This story of coming to his house, having sex, and then hanging themselves naked from a beam installed in his house was a story he peddled to dozens of women over multiple years. His Yahoo Instant Messenger chats depicted a man who was very lonely. He told one woman, the Canadian woman who went by Happy Love, that he wanted to die because he was so ugly and no one but his dog wanted him. He confessed to her that if she would move there to be with him, he wouldn't take his own life. As the investigation continued, the media learned that this wasn't the first time police had heard rumors of a sex and suicide party. Months prior, a woman from Missouri called Klamath Falls police to alert them that one of their residents was planning a party and intended to end it with a mass suicide. At the time, police didn't find any reason to arrest Krein. Luckily for them, it appeared that even after all of these months, they still may have intervened just in time. Krein was indicted mid-February on 1 count of solicitation to commit murder and 4 counts of solicitation to commit manslaughter. He was held for $100,000 bail. The state argued to have the bail increased, but the judge declined as it was obvious his family could not even afford the original bail. The district attorney spoke to the media and described that their case was experiencing significant budgetary limitations. So what they did was end up selecting 4 cases that they thought were the strongest, and they only pursued those ones in court. So it's highly likely that those 4 were also the women that they could identify so that they could be a witness, because they were having a hard time even discovering who those people were.
Can we acknowledge how upsetting it is that someone could get away with something just
because
based
of
on
a budget
cut?
And would it have been different if they could prove somebody actually completed it? Mm-hmm. Maybe it would be different. Maybe they could get more funds. But that is really sense. And I mentioned that here. Knowing that Krein admitted to speaking to 31 women about suicide and potentially convincing them to commit it makes it really hard to accept that they would only pursue 4 cases.
And to bring their children to be murdered.
Absolutely. This case was interesting because as far as we know, Krein never officially helped someone complete suicide. We know he spent years talking about it and planning for a suicide party, but he hadn't physically done anything to anyone. So evaluating his chats was key to understanding how disturbed he actually was and how they could proceed with this case. Was it all a joke? Was he serious? Did he really intend to have all of these women show up at his house and kill themselves? District Attorney Ed Caleb was quoted in a Herald and News article aptly titled Hearts and Death, where he said, quote, "A suicide pact itself is not a crime, but it is a felony to cause, motivate, or solicit another person to commit suicide." The chat records did seem to support the argument that he tried to motivate and solicit suicide with dozens of women. Krein sat in jail for 7 months awaiting trial. But in September 2005, it ended up being suspended until Krein was able to be evaluated at the Oregon State Mental Hospital. Once evaluated, the psychiatrist detailed that Krein suffered from multiple mental disorders. Krein's defense attorney, Eve Merritt, said that most people agreed he was not competent for court. By October, he was officially moved to the Oregon State Mental Hospital where he could receive treatment. In 2006, Krein was found guilty except for insanity at a non-jury trial. He was sentenced to the Oregon State Mental Hospital rather than going to prison. But due to a paperwork error, a retrial was forced. Krein had given a verbal statement where he chose to forgo a jury. However, it appeared that it was not captured in a written form and he did not sign it, which was required. So due to that, the Oregon Court of Appeals agreed that he would have to go back to court and be retried for his crimes. The retrial was set to begin in 2008. This time, the document to waive a jury trial was signed by him, and he returned to the Oregon State Mental Hospital under the jurisdiction of the Psychiatric Review Board for 20 years. He was credited time he had previously served. So if you do the math, Krein's sentence will be up in 2026. As far as we know, no one committed suicide, but unfortunately, they were not able to find everyone that had spoken to him over the years. I mentioned earlier that a woman named Jamie, or screen name Kill Tori Spelling, was approached by Krein online prior to the planned suicide party. He asked her questions about suicide, most of which she thought were an online prank. After a couple of hours of speaking with him, Jamie grew concerned as he described how a woman was intending to travel all the way to Klamath Falls and bring her children along. Jamie is kind enough to join Murder in the Rain to tell us a little bit about her experience. Hi, Jamie. Thanks again for joining me to talk a little bit about this case. Before we get started, I was wondering if you wanted to share a little bit about yourself.
My name's Jamie. I live in Eastern Oregon. I'm married, have 2 pugs.
Cute.
Avid book reader.
So am I.
Podcast listen to her.
Perfect. You're in great company then. Perfect. So let's go back to 2005. You went by the screen name Kill Tori Spelling, and Alicia will kill me if I don't ask you, where'd you come up with that name?
Well, I was a hardcore 90210er back in the day. And then Scream 2 came out.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a Rolling Stone cover with her like in the shower, covered in blood like Psycho. And
I love
there
it.
Was.
That's great. I'm going to have to look for that online. She was big then. I remember we had a magazine at my house. I feel like it was a Playboy magazine spread.
Ooh.
She did a bunch, not like any nudie shots, but she did like a whole spread of photos. My stepdad had it, of course. Okay, so on a more serious note, talk to me about the first time you interacted with Gerald Krein or Suicide Party 2005. Did he approach you?
Yeah, I mean, this was in the days of Yahoo groups.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to date myself really hard. I think at one point I'd like been part of some music group, on Yahoo, and had that name. And that he said that's how he found me, was from my username. He just randomly messaged me on Yahoo Messenger.
So did he just target for a one-on-one chat? Did he invite you to any of his other chat groups?
Nope. I guess technically the first contact was in Yahoo Messenger, and then he invited me to the Yahoo group where people were supposedly corresponding, making arrangements, I guess. It was bizarre.
Okay, so tell me about it. So I think I read an article where you said you thought he was joking at first, but then you kind of grew concerns. So why don't you take us through, how it started, when you started getting concerns, and then when you were like, wait, this is serious. I probably should do something about this.
Well, he literally, I think the first thing he asked me was, have you ever thought about suicide?
Such a
okay, well,
opening line.
Yeah, unsolicited question.
Right.
And I just messaged back and said, well, sure, who hasn't at some point in their life? Why? Do you want to hurt yourself? And we just kind of started talking back and forth. And he told me where he lived, that he was working at a Blockbuster Video when they still had videos. But he was looking forward to quitting his job so he could focus solely on planning this party for Valentine's Day.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. And then he sent me to a website that I think it was hotornot.com or something like that, with a picture of him to rate him.
Oh boy.
He kept asking to see pictures of me. So I actually sent him pictures of a chick I went to high school with.
I mean, we've all done that.
I think I was friends with her on MySpace. And he's just like, you're hot. I'm like, well, thanks a lot, dude. And it just got weirder after that. He asked me how I wanted to die, how I had thought about killing myself. And then he kind of just put it out there. Hey, I'm doing this. I'm setting up this thing for Valentine's Day for people that want to kill themselves, kind of like a party.
Wow.
At my house. I was like, oh yeah? That sounds awesome.
What kind of details did he give you at the time?
He told me he had built a beam along the structure of his house so people could hang there.
Wow.
And I was like, you're serious about this? And he's like, I'm dead serious about this.
Huh.
And so I just kind of started messing around with it, because I'm bored.
Right.
And started really asking him some serious questions. And it was just like, where did you come up with this idea? Why now? What's this? Blah, blah, blah. And he was really depressed that girls didn't seem to like him, and supposedly had found other people that were interested in it, and that they were going to go down there, that they were going to go down to his place in Klamath Falls and all commit suicide on Valentine's Day the next year. Who does that?
Yeah.
Random night,
It's what's interesting is I read an article about him interacting with another woman and sending his photo and getting on a webcam, and her telling him he was attractive. Like he's not an unattractive person. So
no,
it sounded like he was very obsessed with his image and what he was projecting, that people thought he was unattractive.
Yeah.
Did you get that vibe from him as well?
Yeah, he was very he kept saying people called him a dog. And that I don't think he ever had a girlfriend. because he had asked me if I wanted to have sex before we killed ourselves.
Right.
And yeah, if I wanted to be naked, or it was just odd.
So how long did you interact with him for?
Maybe an hour and a half. I got his phone number. I got his address.
Wow.
Where he worked, what Blockbuster he worked at. I had said I don't have a car, so I don't know how I'm going to make it down to Klamath Falls. I'm in Portland at the time, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to really be able to make it. I'll see if I can catch a ride with somebody. And he said that a woman was coming down from Portland that he'd been chatting with, and she was bringing 4 of her kids. And I was like, well, whoa, like, how old are these kids? And I think he even told me their ages, and that they were going to kill the kids before they killed themselves, or that they had talked about it. And a friend of mine was a 911 dispatcher at the time, back in my hometown. And so I just texted her and said, hey, this weirdo just messaged me randomly on, instant message, and he's telling me all this stuff. And she happened to be at work. And so she did a call, and she's like, I would call Portland Police Department and just, make an info.
Right.
Why not? You've got all his info, so.
And was that the only time you interacted with him? Did he try to contact you after that?
No, I never. If he did, I blocked him. Yeah. And then I deleted myself out of that group, and I was done.
Yeah, no kidding. So did you take her advice then and call police right away, or did you kind of think about it? Oh, you did?
I printed out our entire chat log. I printed out the hot or not thing with his picture. I gave him his telephone number, his address, where he supposedly worked at, what car he drove that he told me. I mean,
good for you.
Why not? And 2 cops showed up at my apartment and were just kind of, don't talk to strangers on the internet if you don't want to talk, get creepy content or whatever. And I was just like, oh yeah, okay.
So they're victim blaming then? Or
next time I won't call.
So what happened after that? Did they recontact you?
No, nobody ever contacted me, never heard anything. And it was just kind of like that story you tell at the bar, right?
Yeah.
For the next 3 months. And I'm walking, I was working at Portland State at the time and going to school. And a friend of mine called me, and I just gotten onto campus, and she's like, I think that guy you talked to a couple months ago just got arrested.
Oh, wow.
And she just seen it, online. So I ran to my office and, Googled Klamath Falls suicide pact or something like that. And there it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a crazy experience, especially, just calling on a whim. You don't know if it's true or not. You're just kind of passing info. And then to find out he really was planning that, other people called, that must have been intense.
Yeah. I was really, really scared that somebody had hurt themselves,
Mm-hmm.
But luckily, I don't know if anything ever really happened, with anybody, but.
For my research, I don't think that there was evidence that anyone did, but that's only if they could contact all of them. I don't know for sure. It's very scary that someone can kind of manipulate vulnerabilities that are in place and actually try to have some follow through on it.
Yeah.
So do you still think about it a lot?
Not really. Sometimes my friends will give me, a hard time about it around Valentine's Day, but
something to remember.
It's just like one of those things. Like I was telling a friend of mine tonight, she's a big podcast, listen to her. And I was telling her about
shared
it.
With her.
Yeah. And she was just like, why did you never tell me this? I'm like, I never thought to.
Well, after so many years, you try not to think about it as much, I'm sure. Well, I have to say that's amazing that you did that. Not everybody would do that because they probably would write it off as like, it's just someone yanking my chain. But, had you not, they
when kids get involved, like that's not a joke anymore.
Mm-hmm.
At all.
Absolutely. So what did you take away from that experience? Did it change your life, or do you feel like it was just one of those weird things that happened to you in life?
I don't think it changed it so much. I never even heard what happened with him after the fact. I think I read somewhere that he had ended up in the state hospital,
mm-hmm.
But I don't know if he's still there.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I already recorded the case, and basically he went to the hospital. They had to retry him because they never got a signature from him that he waived a jury trial. He stood in front of the judge. So they went back to court. It still went through same sentence, 20 years. And as far as I know, he's still there, but he'd be up for parole in a few years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
It's intense. Hopefully because he's there, hopefully he's getting the care he needs, because obviously
Right.
he's really suffering. But yeah, I'm interested to see kind of how the story unfolds, if he does end up leaving or if he continues to stay there.
Mm-hmm. I still have that email address, so
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Just in case.
that is one thing that took away my email address got posted on the front page of the Oregonian.
Oh, did you get mail from that?
Thousands, and not all great ones.
Oh no.
And some scary ones. And then everybody found out where I worked, and everybody found out where I lived. I did one interview, and then they were on me for about 7 days. And I got like that little feeling of fear of paparazzi, just a shred, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was not fun.
It's funny you say that, because I found your name out of probably that one interview, right?
Yep.
And it took me all of 3 minutes to find you and reach out. So
yeah.
We get mail too,
Sure.
It's funny, I'm on TikTok and somebody's like, I can see your last name. And I'm like, honey, you can Google me. It will be there. I'm way past that now, but thank you.
Yeah. That wasn't fun.
So, how do you go? Did you kind of lock it down for a while? And
went home. I went back to my hometown, which is where I'm living now, about 3 hours away from Portland, and just like hunkered down for a week with my parents,
Wow.
And then I came back and went to work, and everything was fine. Something big happens, nobody cares about that story anymore.
Yeah,
but I was excited.
Blessing, I guess, in a way, but
Anderson Cooper, I thought he almost was going to say my name. He did a segment about the story, and I was like,
say my name, Anderson Cooper.
Didn't do it.
Almost. He talked about the story, though. You had a big part in it. You turned someone in. That's huge. Alicia and I, my co-hosts, we're always telling people, like, you see something, you say something. As cheesy as it is, you never know when you're going to be the hero, and you have to go with your gut,
Yep. Never know.
You never know. So that's like the one thing we try to get through to people with the show is like, if it seems fishy, it's probably fishy.
Yeah. If it's too good to be true, it usually is.
Absolutely. But yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. It was really nice to meet you. I appreciate your time. Thanks again to Jamie for joining us for today's case. Suicide is a very real concern for thousands of people. If you or anyone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.
If you're like Emily, you're probably always on the lookout for a new podcast. And lucky for you, the latest season of the wildly popular con-themed podcast Chameleon is back. In season 1, they talked about the Hollywood con queen, a scam targeting up-and-coming hopefuls in Hollywood's film industry. It was great. I was hooked on every word. Season 2, High Rollers, tracked the story of an FBI sting operation gone wrong. This new season is called Wild Boys, and it covers the 2003 international news story where 2 half-starved young boys wandered from the wilderness into a small Canadian town. They become known as the Bush Boys, and they tell this incredible story about being raised in the British Columbia wilderness. In fact, they tell the town that it was their first ever contact with society. They'd never seen a TV, gone to school, used a cell phone, or registered for an ID. There was just one problem. Not a single word the boys were saying was true. Nearly 20 years later, award-winning comedian and journalist Sam Mullins uncovers the bizarre true story of the strangers who turned his hometown upside down. It's a psychological drama you can't miss, with never-before-heard interviews and audio from the boys and their family.
I cannot wait to dig into this one. I love a good scandal.
Who doesn't? To hear the story, search for Chameleon Wild Boys on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening now. It's summertime and I'm ready to rest, relax, and catch some rays.
Well, don't forget your sunscreen.
Of course I won't. I also won't forget my Kefla Organics CBD.
Good plan. Kefla Organics is one of my favorite ways to relax and enjoy the benefits of CBD, whether I'm at home with a tea, reading some true crime, or laying at the beach on my day off.
Kefla Organics is a fair trade, vegan, refined sugar-free CBD company. And at KeflaOrganics.com, you'll find chocolate bars, hot cocoa, chai lattes, and more, making the taking of CBD a lot more enjoyable than a regular tincture.
And Murder in the Rain listeners can get 20% off using the promo code RAIN20.
So follow at Enjoy Kefla on social media and visit KeflaOrganics.com. Use the code RAIN20 at checkout to save 20% while enjoying guilt-free, stress-reducing, sleep-assisting, delicious Kefla Organics CBD products. But I did find that interesting that it was based around being sexual first and then doing that, because in my head I'm like, well, but if it's fun, you're going to release so many
and maybe you won't want to kill
hormones.
yourself. I know it's like the two things he really wants to do that he feels like he can't get done in his everyday life. You know, he really struggled with the idea that women didn't find him attractive, but he is not unattractive. And these women he was webcam chatting with were telling him that.
It's almost like it was the only tool he had was, I'm depressed and I think about suicide. I wonder if other girls do. Mm-hmm. Oh, now I can talk to girls. Like it's, oh, it might as well be Game of Thrones, or, you know, where it's that connecting
I'm really wondering
thing.
What his intelligence level is too.
Oh yeah, like an IQ score.
It seems very young, very young behavior.
It's hard because when you're especially on Instant Messenger, I mean, I was a teenager on Instant Messenger. I was usually pretty honest, but you definitely have that free reign of whatever. So to say like 30 people, 50 people are going to hang themselves on this thing I'm going to create. Didn't he live in a mobile home?
Yeah, with his parents.
So where, you know, it's like
he claims he was putting it in the computer room, a reinforced beam across the ceiling.
For 30 people. Like no bedroom is
and
big
I never did see if police found something like that on the property. I didn't mention, it wasn't mentioned in the articles, so I think it was all talk.
It does just all go to show how much he wasn't doing, you know? It's a very tricky case because, first off, before I lose track, a suicide news group?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm thinking, is it like a notification anytime a suicide happens?
Right, or like...
I mean, there's a group for everything online.
That's true, but... yeah, that's just upsetting. I thought for a second, too, that what if this was some sort of plan he had where they would die and he doesn't, and he gets to, like, if this was a trial run to see if it would work.
Relive it.
Yeah, and then next year, you know.
Like a cult leader.
Suicide Party 2006. It's better than last, you know, whatever weird thing he's trying to do. It's just a really tough one for me. It's very topical because we're talking now a lot about First Amendment rights and what can be said online and how much weight it has, because we've seen the weight that it can have. But also, how do you manage that? Because how
do you navigate it?
How do I not just say, oh, I was kidding. Nobody showed up. That seems like a really easy case.
Well, it was a pattern of behavior too. So I think if it was just the one conversation in 2005, that's easy to write off as a prank.
Right.
But he had a pattern in all of his conversations. Suicide was his fixation. So I think they were able to prove how serious it was. But I am thankful that he doesn't just go to jail for attempting these things.
Absolutely. I even wrote that. I was like, I'm glad he's getting help. Number one, like that's at least.
And he didn't technically.
That's what came from it.
Like no one is. I mean, you're mentally harmed, but no one was harmed.
Right.
So like, it's not like he can't come back from that.
Mm-hmm. And I find it interesting that on one hand, he's being found mentally not competent for a trial or not competent for prison. You know, being found guilty but insanity. But then he can also be this mastermind that was going to get 50 people to bring their children and group orgy and group hanging.
Yeah,
like
it's
a very intricate detailed thing. So it's like,
I just feel like he was one of those people you just are in this dark pit of despair.
Oh, yeah,
and there's no getting out of it.
It's heartbreaking. On one hand, it's like, I mean, I kind of struggle because it's like, well, what are you going to get arrested for? You know,
it's like an outlet space to discuss it. But it could be very real to someone who is looking to complete it. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, and I agree, I'm glad that he is getting help, but that's a very complicated case.
Absolutely is.
I'm looking forward to listeners maybe email us or something on their thoughts on this because it's very complicated.
Yeah, and we're all in the online world, and some of us are younger or older, but
what is that limit?
And I look back to conversations I had. We did talk about very serious things with strangers on the internet. So how do you go from just a casual chat to I'm going to end my life and here's how I'm going to do it.
Or
so,
what I'm saying is serious or it's 100% fact.
So reach out if you have thoughts. Just you can comment on the blog. You can email.
I thought of you and your catfishing story.
For another time. Our second case revolves around a very young couple whose relationship would end in the most tragic and unimaginable way. Delmar Joseph Anholt Jr. spent his younger years attending Catholic school. Despite coming from an appearingly good family, he still had a hard time at home. By the time he got to the 7th grade, he started abusing marijuana and acting out towards authority. He was definitely a handful for his parents, and because of this, he lived in a juvenile detention center for several months. He was even forced to live in a place called Sun Village, which was a school for troubled children. He did eventually come back and live at home and attended Roosevelt High School in Portland, Oregon. During his time there, he was regularly suspended for causing trouble, but it was in that very school where he met his girlfriend, Tara Lee McCarthy. Delmar and Tara got together when she was 15 and he was 16. Tara came from a large family from the St. John's neighborhood. Her family made the decision to move away from the area, but Tara didn't want to leave her high school or her boyfriend, so she ended up moving in with the Anholt family so she could remain at Roosevelt High School. While they were together, he continued to make poor decisions. He was arrested for theft and ended up getting just probation, but that didn't stop him from violating that probation and having to spend 14 months living in the Oregon Correctional Institution. During his sentence, Tara stayed with him. She went to school, held multiple jobs, and contributed to the Anholt family. When he was released and returned home, he refused to look for full-time work and instead let Tara continue to have multiple jobs and support him. However, the two remained close and did everything together. The pair's relationship isn't talked about in depth, so I'm unsure if it was more often loving or tumultuous, but we do know that during the time they lived together, Tara left several times to stay with her sister, so we can deduce that it wasn't a perfect match. We also know that Tara and Delmar had gotten pregnant 4 times over the course of 4 years. The first 3 pregnancies were terminated, but the 4th pregnancy was kept and very much wanted by Tara. In February of 1982, Tara was 8 months pregnant and the couple were living together, so seemingly they were preparing to become a family. On February 14th, 1982, the young couple, a now 20-year-old Delmar and a 19-year-old Tara, were hitchhiking from Portland to the Oregon coast. Their ride, a truck, started to break down, so they were dropped off outside of the Columbia Memorial Gardens Cemetery in Scappoose, Oregon. It was late afternoon, and they had roughly 90 miles to go before they reached their destination. It was a very rainy day, so the couple took shelter in a barn across the street from the cemetery. The two of them had their backpack full of supplies, including clothes, food, and even camping gear. Within a few minutes of being dropped off and escaping the rain, Delmar became very upset with Tara. He started accusing her of being pregnant with someone else's baby. She refused to admit to this, which made him even more angry with her. He also started requesting that she repent to Jesus Christ. Later that evening, not long after the couple was dropped off, a state police trooper, Ron Rucker, was driving in the area when he noticed 2 suspicious figures in the grass. He got out of his car and trudged through the rain with his flashlight in hand to investigate, only to find that the figures were actually 2 abandoned backpacks. As he walked around the area, he crossed an embankment and noticed someone was hunched over what appeared to be another person lying on the ground. As he got closer, he discovered something terrible. I want to warn you that what I'm about to describe is incredibly gory, even for me, and I just want to make sure that I tell you one more time because I promise you won't be able to erase this from your brain. As Rooker approaches the figure, he can now distinguish a man. He can hear him muttering something along the lines of, "It's okay, it's okay." As he shines his flashlight over the man to get a better look, he sees that he's hunched over a woman and he has his thumb stuck in her eye sockets. He's doing this circular motion, one that can only be described as gouging. The woman who's laying there completely still isn't making any noise, so the officer was pretty certain she was dead. The man finally notices Officer Rooker and begins to get up and walk towards him. At this point, Rooker knows he needs to get back to his car to call for backup. He realizes the situation is incredibly dangerous and he doesn't want to be alone with this attacker. He somehow very calmly convinces the man to walk back to the car with him and leave the woman's body behind. He handcuffs him, puts him in the back of the cruiser, and then calls for backup before returning to the crime scene to get a better look and take some notes. The young woman had clearly sustained unimaginable traumas. Right away, Rooker made a note that the woman appeared to be pregnant and her clothes had been partially removed. She wore a t-shirt and bra, but her jeans and underwear had been pulled down past her knees to her ankles. There was a very clear view that a sexual trauma had occurred. Her pants had puncture holes in the crotch as if there was an attempt to penetrate her through her clothing. Left inside her vagina were parts of a broken fishing pole. She lay flat on her back with her feet bound and her knees up in the air with her heels touching her backside. Around her neck was some kind of cord with slip knots, and it was attached to her wrist and ankles. This indicates a bit of knot knowledge. This is a type of knot that would tighten anytime you move. So if she were to move her ankles, it would choke her throat. She also had stab or puncture traumas all over her body. Once the officers and paramedics arrived, Anholt was taken to the hospital to undergo a number of tests before being arrested. He had blood drawn, urine samples taken. Police were then notified that Anholt had been on both methamphetamines and amphetamines. This means he was hyped up on multiple types of speed. He was taken into custody and charged with murder, and not long after that, a psychiatrist was brought in to evaluate him. This man, Dr. Hugh Gardner, diagnosed Anholt with significant mental issues. Among his disorders was a severe antisocial personality disorder. He had signs of egotistical and narcissistic tendencies, not a big shocker, but what the doctor was describing was someone who always puts himself first with little regard for anyone else's life or their safety. The doctor also later testified that Anholt's mental illnesses would not influence him in committing a murder. So while he had no care about someone's life, it's not going to be a reason he murdered someone. Plenty of people have that exact same disorder and live a fully functional life. The state medical examiner, William Brady, took Tara from the scene so that an autopsy could be given. When he examined Tara's body, his findings were terrifying. He said outside of a few cases of dismemberment and beheadings that he had worked on, this was the worst case of mutilation he had seen in his entire career. Tara's cause of death was both strangulation as well as the severe hemorrhaging from her uterus. In this kind of situation, either trauma would have killed her, so it's hard to say which was the actual cause. As you know, Tara was sexually assaulted with pieces of a fishing pole, but inside of her were also 2 roadside flares. She had several puncture wounds to her abdomen. Her eye sockets, face, and genitals had sustained severe burns. Her eyes had been fully removed, and 8-inch metal spikes were found forced into her pregnant abdomen. The trauma had caused premature labor, but as the birth canal was fully packed with objects, the baby had no path to be born and died of asphyxiation. Anholt went to trial, and like the previous case, it was not a jury trial. It was a 4-day trial at the Columbia County Circuit Court, and it was presided on by Judge James Mason. He pleaded not guilty, and his attorney had stated that he was innocent due to his mental state and the fact that he was under the influence of drugs. And because of that, his argument that he was not in a state to be able to have some intent to kill someone. In court, the police interrogations with Anholt were used as evidence. In the interviews, Anholt said that he became violent towards Tara after she refused to admit that the baby wasn't his. And shocker, it was his. He described how he chased her through the cemetery, and when he finally caught her, he started punching her in the abdomen until she fell to the ground. He believed the child was, quote, demon seed, and he needed to kill it. He proceeded to bind her legs and wrists before driving the metal stakes into her body while she was alive. He then went on to commit the other atrocities to her body while she was alive, as well as the others he did after she died. Anholt described that he had intended to bury her there in the cemetery and try to get away, but he was interrupted when the officer showed up. So I kind of ask you this. If it had been a jury trial and I was on this jury, the argument that his lawyer made about him not having mental capacity was kind of out the window with that. Like, he was clearly planning ahead.
Right.
So he had mental capacity. He could intend to kill someone if he intended to hide it. On Tuesday, May 28, 1982, Anholt was sentenced to life in prison after being convicted of the torture murder of his 19-year-old girlfriend, Tara McCarthy. The death of his child couldn't legally be considered murder. And I know most of us hate that. We've talked about it before in one of your more horrifying cases. Mm-hmm. But a baby, as our law states, isn't a human, isn't considered a person until they've taken that first breath. And since his child could not escape the birth canal, it never took that first breath and was never technically deemed human.
That's surprising since it died of asphyxiation.
But it never,
meaning it was trying
to take that. Well, it was a full-term baby.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder.
But it was also the 80s.
Oh, yeah. And I wonder, too, if maybe prosecution didn't push that because they didn't want to lose the case based
over
on
that technicality. Yeah, they had enough with the torture killing.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot online about what has happened since he went to prison, with the exception of a single article that mentions, quote, he was sentenced to life in prison on May 25th, where he remains until this day. However, I'm not sure if that's the case. I was able to find a little bit of info on 3 websites that do like mugshot and jail bookings. And it said that he was booked in 1995. So in December of 1995, a Texas jail booked him on what they called an Oregon hold. And then it was noted that he was released to another agency in 1997. So I think that means that he transferred there and likely got transferred elsewhere. But he could very well have been released because, as we know, a life prison term isn't always life. It could be 20 years.
With the possibility of parole?
There's no information on it. And he's definitely not in Oregon. He's out of our Oregon prison system. Otherwise, I would have been able to find that information.
Really?
So my concern is
somewhere.
He is released if he did fulfill his term. Because at 82, that was a long time ago.
But also, that's our judicial system.
It is.
He served his time. He did the crime. He served his time. And because
hopefully
of our system,
we're
supposed to say, and now here's your next chance.
Yep. So
as horrific as
it's either he's in his 60s and a free man, or he is in another state's prison system.
I'm going to guess after time in prison and drug doing that 60 would seem like a little bit of a reach.
Maybe he was like a fit person. So it's hard to say. Yeah. If anyone has the ability to look that up, give us a call.
Do you have any new neighbors that came from the Pacific Northwest? Ask them what they did for 20 years.
He had long reddish hair. Check our blog for a picture of him. So one thing that came out of this case that I had to bring up today was there was a lot of rumor about him being part of the occult. So it was
very
the 80s. So it's the 80s, so take it with a grain of salt. But the rumor was that at some point he got his hands on a calf and he butchered it for a ritual. But like I said, it was satanic panic. I think he did horrific things that people wanted to explain away as like only a occultist would do this. And then also let's go back to his comment to his girlfriend about, I need you to repent to God and this is demon seed, personally, I would think he would be trying to get demon seed if he was in the occult.
Right.
You know, so I had to write that off.
He was someone on really intense drugs.
Yes, I
and
agree.
It was the 80s.
And he was young. His brain wasn't even fully formed when he was doing drugs.
Right. And so you're on this really intense drug that really messes with your brain. And being that young, and now your girlfriend's pregnant, and all of that stress, pressure, all of that deadly combination, clearly. And that can be what it is. It doesn't have to be he was in a cult. And how interesting for the cop to go by and then to stop, to be like, what's going on over there?
Yeah, he was doing like routine traffic stops, and then he drove by the cemetery and saw big backpacks. Like, thank goodness for him.
Yeah, just like actual patrolling.
An actual cop.
So,
Take
I
that
mean,
back.
that's... But, you know, he could have potentially gotten away with it. I mean, my guess, if the
I think it would be a little sloppy.
If the cop hadn't been there, they would have known it was him that done something with the girlfriend, even if she was missing and they didn't find her body. But that
what if there was a fresh grave and he pulled what I would do, which is a double burial?
Obviously. He would have been caught because
I mean, drug related violent crime is typically very messy.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of perfection with the cleanup, so I do think he would have been caught.
Yeah.
Especially since they were like a known couple. But yeah, thank goodness he was caught in the act so he could be taken off the streets. Mm-hmm. And after all of that, I hope everyone feels a little bit more comfortable if they don't have a Valentine this year, because I think I've shown you today that sometimes it's not all that it's cracked up to be. And on a more serious note, I do want to leave you with some helplines because it is a challenging time out there. And if you need help, we want to make sure you get it. Click on the show notes and you'll find several resources. Now, we all love the internet. In fact, I imagine most of us.
I'm your host for the internet, Daffy Duck. We received this amazing CD in the mail.
Shut up.
For 30 days of free internet.
Oh my God, we did.
Like every month.
I forgot about that. Okay. Second take. Just forget the 30 previous. Patreon shoutouts.
Shout out.
And you gotta do your sorry.
Whoa.
I thought that was fake.
Oh, we got a new Patreon.
Murder in the Rain is produced and edited by Josh McCullough. Written and hosted by Emily Rowney and Alicia Holland. Artwork by Jamie Costa. Music by Kai Pfeiffer at kyfifer.com. Check out our website, murderintherain.com, for additional information on all cases, a fun interactive map, and be sure to subscribe so you can receive our newsletter. Check out the Mad Props page for coupon codes from some of our sponsors. We love your reviews and seeing them on all streaming platforms, especially iTunes. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And suck my balls.
Please put that in.
How does an everyday person turn into a thief, a cult leader, or a scammer? From Cast Media, The Opportunist is a new podcast that tells true stories of regular people who turn sinister simply by embracing opportunity.
In the first series, we follow Sherry Schreiner, a Midwest mom and lifelong churchgoer turned internet cult leader. They speak with family and friends of deceased cult members, prosecutors, police officers, a high-profile cult expert, and more.
Be sure to subscribe to Cast Media's podcast, The Opportunist, on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen.